All right, let's dive right in. Today, we are pulling back the curtain on some of the most powerful and, pretty controversial secrets of the multimillionaire mindset. Now, this is not your typical save more, spend less financial advice. Nope, we're exploring the unspoken rules of energy, mindset, and influence that the ultra-successful seem to just get. The source material for this is direct, it's unapologetic, so if you're ready to look beyond the ordinary, let's get started.
So, right off the bat, the biggest roadblock to wealth, according to our source, is the way we're all taught to think. We hear knowledge is power our whole lives, right? But the thing is, isolated knowledge is actually pretty useless. Real power, the kind that builds fortunes, only happens when you organize that knowledge and direct it with laser focus towards a single, definite purpose. And that leads us straight to our first big idea.
Okay, so if individual knowledge isn't enough, how do you create that kind of organized, supercharged effort? Well, the answer lies in this first pillar, harnessing collective genius. It's often called the Mastermind principle. This is all about moving beyond your own limitations by learning how to literally multiply your mental and maybe even your spiritual power.
Now pay close attention to that phrase, a third superior mind. That's the real key here. This is so much more than just a brainstorming session. The source describes it as a kind of psychic synergy. When you get two or more minds working in perfect harmony, they create this invisible, intangible force, a brand new, more powerful collective consciousness.
The best way to think about this is the battery metaphor. It explains it perfectly. Imagine your brain is a single battery, right? It's got a set amount of energy. But when you form one of these mastermind alliances, you're essentially building a battery pack. And the combined energy, well, it's not just added together, it's multiplied, creating this massive surge of thought power that one person could just never achieve on their own.
And this isn't just theory. Look at Henry Ford. The guy started out with very little formal education and not a lot of money, but his fortune just exploded after he formed a mastermind group with absolute geniuses like Thomas Edison and Harvey Firestone. The lesson here is profound. You literally absorb the nature, the habits, and even the thought power of the people you hang around with the most.
Okay, now we're moving on to our second pillar, the engine of ambition. And I've got to say, this is probably the most controversial idea we're going to talk about today. It's about taking our most powerful primal energy and learning how to transform it into pure fuel for ambition and creative genius.
Our source points to what it calls sexual energy as our most powerful driving force. The average person, it argues, just kind of dissipates this energy. But the genius, the empire builder, they learn how to transmute it. And that just means consciously redirecting that same intense energy away from a purely physical release and channeling it into their imagination, their courage, and their creative work. That redirected force is what builds fortunes.
You know, this whole concept also explains a really fascinating phenomenon that the source points out. Why do most men rarely achieve huge success before they're 40 or 50? Well, the theory is that it's only after years and years of dissipating this vital energy that they finally learn how to master it. And it's at that exact point that their creative power and their earning potential finally hit their peak.
So what's the subconscious driver behind all this ambition? According to the source, for many people, it's a deep-seated desire to please and impress a partner. This drive, when it's channeled correctly through things like love and romance, is said to bring a special kind of balance and purpose to their actions. The argument is that without this powerful emotional driver, the quest for massive wealth would just lose its meaning.
All right, we've covered external alliances with other people, and we've talked about internal energy. Now we get to the third pillar, your inner world. This is all about mastering your subconscious blueprint, actively programming the most powerful tool you have so that it works for you, not against you. The source uses this really powerful metaphor of an invisible river. Your emotions, they create the current. Positive emotions like faith, love, enthusiasm, they pull you towards the bank of fortune. But negative emotions, fear, doubt, self-pity, they drag you over to the bank of poverty. The whole key is that your dominant emotional state decides which way you're flowing. And this part is absolutely critical. Your subconscious never sleeps. It's always on, 24/7, soaking up your dominant thoughts. So if you're not consciously and deliberately planting the seeds of your desires, your goals, your plans, then by default, you are letting the seeds of fear and doubt take root. And eventually, those seeds will grow into your reality.
But how do you actually plant those seeds effectively? Well, here's a huge rule you have to understand.
pure logic will not work. You can't just reason your way into wealth. The subconscious mind, it just doesn't speak that language.
The language it does speak is emotion. Our source uses this brilliant metaphor: emotion is the yeast of the mind. A thought, all by itself, is like flat, lifeless dough. But when you mix that thought with a powerful, positive emotion, like faith or enthusiasm, it acts just like yeast. It gives the thought life and compels it to rise and expand into physical reality.
This brings us to what you could call a law of mental exclusivity. Faith and fear are like oil and water. They simply cannot occupy the same space in your mind at the same time. You have to choose which one is going to be the dominant force, because your subconscious will faithfully and without question materialize the physical equivalent of whichever emotion is in charge.
Okay, if you only remember one thing from this entire breakdown, let it be this. If you ask for success with your words, but deep down you are vibrating with the emotion of fear, your subconscious completely ignores the words. It only acts on the dominant feeling. So it will deliver the physical equivalent of that fear, which is failure. The emotion is the real instruction.
So let's bring all of this home with our final command. This is a fascinating final piece of insight from the source material that really ties all these principles together, and it leaves us with a pretty provocative question.
So here's the bonus secret. Think of your brain as a broadcasting and receiving station for thought vibrations. When you raise your own mental vibration through powerful positive emotions, you're not just motivating yourself, you are literally tuning your receiver to a higher frequency. And this allows you to pick up on brilliant ideas and attract the exact people you need to achieve your goals, almost like magic.
And that brings us to the final, challenging question. If every single outcome in your life is a direct response to the dominant emotion you are broadcasting out into the world, just take a moment and be brutally honest with yourself. Look at your results, your life as it is right now, and ask yourself, what am I truly asking for?